So, firstly, my apologies to say that I'm not there. It's always my preference to be there. Plus, also, I will be an early departure, given the reason that I couldn't be there, and I'll have to leave not long after 11 o'clock.
Thank you for that, Bruce. And we also have an apology for Councillor Cranston. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Foster. All in favour? Any declarations of interest? Favour?
Aye.
3 carried. We take a look at our action sheet and you will see today we do have, where is Mr. Steve Breen? Mr. Steve Breen, you are first on my dancing list. A verbal report will be delivered to the committee on the 9th of October in regards to how we compare to other councils in regards to treaty commitment. Am I lying? No, I'm not. It is on.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you for allowing us to dial in today, and also slight apologies for not getting the paper out with the main agenda, but getting it out on Friday afternoon. Hopefully everybody's been able to have a bit of a read over the weekend. So, in terms of where the audit's at, essentially we've completed all our work. We've stopped asking questions of council, which they'll probably be of management, which I'm sure they'll be happy of. We've got a little bit of documentation to do, but we're just sort of working with management to say sort of do their final tweaks and edits to the annual report ahead of your council meeting next week. But I can say that there won't be anything substantive that will be identified between now and then. It's just minor tidy ups of report and our own files. As you will all be fully aware, the 23-24 financial year has been a very busy one for council. A lot of activity and level of activity associated with your infrastructure and the other operations that you've been required to attend to during the financial year has been our sort of key area of focus. I'd like to I'll take my paper as read, but I'm going to basically go through sort of some of our sort of key risk areas, and then really just happy for anybody to sort of shout out and ask a question as we go, but I'll try and have a few moments of pause. I know Bruce will have a few questions for me, so I definitely will pause for Mr. Robinson as we see fit. So if we look back 12 months, back to 30th June 2023, you were still working to reopen a large proportion of your, or significant elements of your roading network. You were still working to understand the extent of the damage that had been incurred by council's roading network and how that should actually reflect, well, first of all, what's it going to cost you to rebuild or renew or return the level of service that your citizens desire for, but also just in terms of how much damage has actually been incurred out there. So during the course of this year's year-end audit, there was a significant focus on looking at the roading assets and the level of impairment, and importantly the unwind of any impairment. Now, within our figures that we've quoted on page 4 of my document, we reflect on revaluation movement that's occurred, but also we reflect on the unwind of impairment. And that unwind of impairment has come about as a consequence of two key things. First of all, the actual physical work that you've done to fix this, but also in some cases where you have, shall we say, cleared blocks at two ends of the road and discovered actually the road in the middle is not such a bad bit. It's not necessarily great, but it's not fully impaired and it's useful. So where roads have been basically brought back into operational use, and that level of impairment allows you to sort of say, right, well, let's pull back on that a little bit, but there's obviously still work to be done. The one thing that sort of shouldn't have surprised me, but it did a little bit, was the sheer costs that you've had to incur to sort of continue on the emergency work, the continuation of the amount of work to remove slips, to remove silt, to remove debris from the road. And so we really wanted to get satisfied that the amount of money spent, which we're not denying at all, we've validated what's been spent, happy with that. It's just whether it should have actually been kind of capitalised because you were teams got to in regards to the value of the infrastructure assets, and also the nature of the work being undertaken across the network has been appropriately classified. I mean, there's degrees of judgment involved in that, and obviously, there are still significant assets that are impaired. There are bridges that are unable to either take full weights or continue to be in need of full replacement. But we think obviously the networks move forward, and your financial statements are reflecting a true fair view of that. Just going to pause on that around sort of valuation and capital works undertaken as to whether there's any sort of questions or queries members of the committee might wish to ask Mark and myself.
Okay, the floor is open. Any questions of Stu on the report or the discussion so far?
I was interested. Sorry, Rick, it's okay to speak to you.
Yes. You go. We're just turning up the volume a little bit more for you. All good.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me okay now?
Perfect.
Look, I was particularly interested in the impairment movement, and actually, I would just reflect and agree with you about the cost and the physical work that has to be done such major events through your district. So
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the nature of dropouts. They don't impact significantly large length of road, and you can go down to one lane and you can work around it. And so the road may be operational under management, but unfortunately the cost of those dropouts and repairing them and putting them into a good state for the future will actually significantly exceed any impairment number that you will actually have incurred, because essentially you're killing off a small section of a depreciated replacement cost value of a road, but the work to actually fill up, restore, construction of robust manner isn't a cheap exercise, as you all know. So what I expect to see is those impairment numbers that are embedded in your valuation at the present time will slowly wind back over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, but in actual fact we'll probably be spending more on sort of capital works to improve or to fix things like dropouts, and hopefully less on the emergency works that's kind of just put to the P&L. All that kind of makes sense. There'll be a bit of a shift of the nature of the work undertaken. Talking with the team at Gisborne, and in terms of the schedule of work that needs to get done, and the going out into the network with NZTA and convincing them of what is the most appropriate and economic approach to things. It's not an easy or short exercise.
yes, and of course the other side of that is future funding flow from NZTA, but that's a future issue rather than necessarily one here for the annual report. Thank you. Appreciate that, Riet.
And that's possibly a good segue into, thank you, Bruce, for that, onto page 6 of my document, in regards to sort of the emergency works and funding. And so one of the challenges in the situation that you have is you receive funding, much of it, some of it in advance, some of it in arrears, principally everything coming from NZTA or Whakatahi is usually post-claim, and funding from Crown Infrastructure Partners is a bit of upfront and also receipt after incurring the expense. And so you've received, as you will see in the numbers, you've received significantly higher levels of funding from the Crown this year than what you have done in previous years. And that is, as you responded, and that Crown package is drawn down. The key for us was really looking through those funding streams, because it's about how expenditure has been incurred to generate the recognition of that revenue. And so whilst we could say, oh, right, well, we can see that there's a contract in place or an agreement in place with the Crown and the money's come in the bank, it's really around, where you do that money, have you incurred the cost that's applicable to that agreement, and therefore can you recognise that revenue? So that's probably been the most challenging part of the audit this year, is really around sort of seeing you've incurred this money, therefore you deserve to earn this revenue that you've signed up for, and getting all that matching right. And that's been complex, because there's been different streams, different funding rates, and obviously there's also a significant amount of money moving in and out of the council. So that's sort of the other major focus. It's very linked with the infrastructure, because of course some of the expenditure gets capitalised and some of the expenditure gets put through the P&L. Any questions on those funding streams?
Yes, we've got Councillor Robinson.
So just on that point, Stuart, are you satisfied that in quite a complex working environment, Council has complied in all regards with appropriating the funding streams in the main?
Complied with in all regards is probably a bit too much of a sweeping statement for an auditor to make. I'm satisfied that your financial statements have been appropriately reflected. I'm satisfied that there are processes in place to identify expenditure streams that relate to funding streams. We undertake sampling. We haven't, where we've raised anything that looks a bit unusual, we've asked questions about that, but I couldn't give you any 100% guarantee that every dollar you've spent relates to every dollar of funding that you've received from the Crown.
Thanks. I really wasn't looking for 100%, but actually just a recognition that in what has been extraordinary times, Council has done a job that has passed your eyes, your scan, your in-depth exploration, and really it was more about acknowledging the staff because, for a little council, this was a huge circumstances, and I just wanted to sort of acknowledge that. I just wanted your confirmation that really they've done the job as you've seen it.
Yeah, and there are some things which Council can always improve on, and once we're through this annual report sign-off process, we'll produce a report to management that will identify some of those matters. But essentially, for the sake of the integrity of the financial statements, we're satisfied with how things have gone. Bruce, you put your hand up. Sorry, that's the chair's role. Sorry.
Tony might have more. Did Tony have any more questions? I don't know. Look, and it might be as much a question for you, Pauline. And look, and it's building off this. So I mean, this is the value of your report, Stu, as it starts to make you think about going forward. And this is really where my question's at. Are we noting any tightening up of NZTA or Crown Infrastructure Partners in terms of either they're wanting assurance over our processes or wanting to do audits or anything like this? I asked that, Pauline, and it's partly because of my advisory work elsewhere. Under the current coalition government, things are tightening up, and I'm just wondering whether indeed this is affecting our recovery funding. I know it's affecting our ongoing NZTA funding around the country, but is there a level of pressure around actually being able to do exactly what we're getting some clearance on here in the future, asserting and getting the revenue that we believe we're owed?
Through the chair, answer in two parts. Definitely, even the tightening up, the requirements from NZTA at the end of last year, they had their own audit for November, so the time from when the expenditure occurred from the event up until the 30th of November, they assessed all that expenditure. There will be another one this year. Normally there would have been perhaps once every 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah.
So therefore we expect that to occur annually, I would imagine, as we go through this. We had, and probably Nadine can answer that better, we've had a very good relationships with NZTA, especially from about February or April last year, where we would have monthly meetings and what are the requirements and what were their expectations and where did we need to do for that kind of the review from the staff, the NZTA staff on the ground within the Gisborne and that relationship. So that relationship has meant that we have a very good relationship, and then the assessment of the data that we have within there is on a monthly kind of a basis of talking where we are at. So that gives the overall assurance. Their requirements, obviously, they want to know it as it goes, but also there will be the external review that occurs as well. And it has definitely tightened within our own relationship. but for good, for that kind of the basis, so we understand their needs and we're making sure that we're accommodating that. Yeah.
Thanks, Pauline. That's really helpful to know.
Any questions from councillors in regards to the section on emergency works and funding? If not, Stu, I'm going to hand back to you to walk us through the rest.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll try and speed up a little bit now. Look, the next category, well, the next area of focus was in regards to Category 3 buyouts and the debris removal. So obviously two separate streams of work that you have historically not had responsibility for, and which you've had to set up sort of systems and processes associated with that. In terms of the Category 3 buyouts, it's obviously quite a process in terms of identifying an appropriate valuation, going through the exercise with the homeowner, the property owner. Obviously, you know, there's emotion and you know, homeowners, you know, want to maximise the value that they get from their property. We look through those transactions. We look through the settlements of that. We look through the funding drawn down from the Crown to support that exercise, and some of that funding gets received in advance. And then we understand how the value of the property has been written down to a more appropriate value given the new categorisation of the property. So it's quite a complex exercise with a range of different sort of related transactions, and we're satisfied that council's booking that appropriately. They take settlement as the sort of final transaction date, but obviously there's also a list of other properties where you are in the process of closing, working through at year end, but we're sort of satisfied how that work's been captured. The sediment and debris removal, obviously there's been significant work there, significant funding received from the Crown. You received a lot of funding in advance, right close to the end of the 30th of June 23 financial year, and then that has been utilised through this financial year, and you've received additional funding for different elements of the work during the course of the year. That's probably the one where you've got, you know, more differences in terms of the procurement practices you've applied, and also, you know, some of the ways that you've funded the community has taken a little bit more to sort of get our heads around. We're building an understanding on that, and that's probably one little space where we're just sort of finalising our documentation on. But we can see from a financial reporting perspective, we're pretty satisfied with how that's been documented and recognised in the financial statements. Next area is around rates. Really no sort of concerns there. Obviously, as a consequence of Cyclone Gabrielle, there were you know, a few more remissions being approved. You've obviously had to, you know, increase your rates take over the course of the year, but from a legal and from a billing perspective, and recognition of that rates revenue, we had no sort of matters that we wanted to draw your attention to. Other elements is the annual report, service performance reporting. We always find that's pretty tidily done at council. You bring the full story together. The annual report, I think, is a good document, possibly getting a little lengthy in places, but I think it tells a really good story about the various different areas of focus for council during the course of the year. Then goes through all your activities and is straight up and reflects on the performance within each of those activities during the year. We've been through that document, tested sort of key performance measures, and given some feedback around some of the discussion in the front end of the document. But we think that's come together. There'll be some few final tweaks by management, and then any input from yourselves before it heads off to council. And the last item I'll just touch on briefly, and I know that you've got Gisborne Holdings coming in later in the meeting, is we have completed the audit of Gisborne Holdings Limited. That was signed off back in September, and the numbers have been appropriately recorded and consolidated into the group financial statements. It's obviously been a pretty tough year for Gisborne Holdings, and also the marketplace is not helping in terms of farm valuations, um, farm prices, and just the general sort of performance of the investment portfolio of property that GHL maintain. So whilst it's a tough market and a number of a series of their numbers have gone backwards during the year, that is really a reflection of the market situation and the pricing out there as compared to anything that the business has gone and done. But we've met with valuers, we've worked through things with GHL, and we were satisfied that that is an appropriate representation of the subsidiary's financial performance for the financial year. I think that's probably enough for me, but more than happy to take any questions or queries.
Okay, councillors, the floor is open if you had any questions. So Stu, just the overarching question from me, when you opened up, you said there were a few issues that still need addressing. I think you highlighted 8 in your report, but you are confident that those will be resolved before we adopt this next week?
No, I wouldn't call them issues. I'd call them, and I might have, so apologies for that, really minor adjustments to the face of the annual report, where things maybe in the verbals in the front of the report don't necessarily align with something else somewhere in the annual report. Getting consistency, a few situations of consistency, a few editorial things where things have been worded that could be potentially a little bit confusing. We've provided that feedback to management. We know that management are working on doing those final pieces of beautification to the annual report, and we're pretty satisfied that that's going to flow through and be reflected in the final version that we get from management for the purposes of putting it out to council.
Thank you for that. Bruce, your hand is up.
Yeah. We appreciate, Stu, you're being very kind to say it's time to wrap up. Could I just check one thing, because it does relate ultimately, well, actually, it may be that it should actually be asked in PX, but Stu, in your low risk focus area around GHL, and I agree, from what I've read, it's a good report. You indicate needing to reach a position with directors on signing the solvency certificate. Is there anything you can contribute in public, or is this a matter for PX, or is it in fact just a matter of process?
Oh, well, I mean, there's elements where they've obviously got obligations under the Companies Act in terms of they need to be satisfied that they can meet their obligations as they fall due before they sign solvency certificates and issue any dividends. And they've obviously got their own responsibilities in terms of managing their balance sheet at any point in time. The cash flows of the business like that do vary depending on what's happening on the farms and whether it's the conditions in the general sort of economic environment. In terms of any other sort of judgmental matters that go into that, I think that's probably good questions for the board of GHL.
Sorry, I think I was trying to work out, is this just a matter of process, which is you're saying payment will come subject to their getting to the point where they sign the solvency certificate, or are you hinting there are issues in doing so? It was unclear from what you wrote there.
Okay. Look, I think it's just those charged with governance going through due process in terms of their own consideration of their own position and their balance sheet.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Great.
Yeah.
And we've got a chance to see them later on, so we can ask more, but it was more just a case of, was this process or you hinting at something larger? Thank you. Riad, can I just make a couple of comments on Stuart, because I found Stuart's report really good. There's a couple of other matters that could I approach you for just to raise? I take a lot out of Appendix A that Stuart's included in his closeout report, which is in effect, Stuart, through your inquiries, there are no conditions or events relating to material uncertainty related to going concern. I think that's really important. You and Nadine have to assert that on our behalf later on as well. We have to form our own view, but I think that's always useful to know. And it's negative assurance, and I wouldn't expect it any other way from Stuart. But he hasn't identified any issue of compliance with laws and regulations. Again, that's hopefully a good sign on management, Nadine, that we've got ourselves there, which is tremendous. Again, we've got to assert that to Stewie in the letter of rep. So I just think it's important that Stuart's given us a strong indication about where he sees it. And also, I just have to notice under fraud and illegal acts that you weren't aware of anything. I mean, obviously, we'd have an obligation to tell you if we did. But again, from your work, Stuart, again, on a negative assurance basis, there's nothing that you've become aware of. Those are important findings from our independent auditor. And while we're focused on impairment or dividend or the result in the annual report itself, the more general nature of our control environment, part of which this signals, is actually really positive. So I just think it's important for the committee that we just note that. And Stuart, thank you that you've given us that. So that was the other thing I noted from the report. What I'm interested in, if I could be rude, and Stuart, I don't know where we're going to get this in the agenda. What opinion are you going to give us?
Lay it out, Stuart. Lay it out to us.
Thank you. Just quickly on the fraud matter, it is a two-way street. So, I'd want to make sure that anybody charged with governance who was aware of any matter, felt that they could approach me and notify me of any matters. But, I still stand by those conclusions in the appendix that Bruce has just referred to. In terms of our opinion, we will issue an unmodified audit report. So that's a clean audit report. In recent histories, there's been minor modifications to many councils' audit reports in regards to changes in legislation associated with three waters. Obviously, that change was repealed, and the Crown and local government are now going down a different path. And because that's a different path at present time, that doesn't mean necessarily balance sheet separation. We are not required to raise any matter on that in our report this year. So it'll be an unmodified audit report in relation to your year to 30th of June 24.
That's great news. Thanks, Stuart.
Don't sound too surprised, Bruce.
No, I'm not surprised. I'm always grateful. That's the key thing.
Any questions off the floor? Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Stuart. Couple of purely questions. On page 15, Fraud and Renewal Act. And the statement here is, we have made inquiries of management regarding. So is that the extent, because that sounds quite superficial when it looks at investigating potential fraud in any area. Is that the extent of fraud detection? And a question of Nadine, are staff trained to spot fraud? And I'd just like to highlight too, anyone who hasn't read the news, but there's a recent case in Auckland where in a procurement situation, someone was caught using $630,000 in bribes. That was last week. So yeah,
I assume the first question is of you, Stu, and then Nadine.
Sure. So yes, I mean we've obviously got an obligation when we're working our way around council to make those inquiries. However, in addition to that, we don't just sort of say, oh well, we've been told nothing. I mean, first of all, our job isn't just to detect instances of fraud. Obviously, if there are material frauds that impact the financial statements, we have an obligation to try and design procedures that will identify that. But in terms of those sort of procedures, we do look at your procurement, we do look at your delegation framework, we do look at how payments are being authorised. We undertake a range of different procedures across the areas of your financial reporting that could give rise to the identification of transactions that are outside of your policies or just inherently unusual and unreasonable based on our professional judgment and expectations. And so that's me looking at, as far as a range of different things, and it might be just credit notes issued to organisations or payments made to various different service providers, ensuring that there's contractual obligations that gave rise and work that's been undertaken to give rise to those payments. Look, nothing is 100% foolproof, but certainly as part of the design of our audit procedures, we are ensuring that your policies and your delegations are adhered to, and those policies include procurement expectations and thresholds.
Yep, and through your worship, so we have in place a fraud, bribery and corruption policy that kind of outlines our expectations, our policy objectives. We encourage, so we outline the process on how they can raise any concerns, but also we promote the use of, I think it's the ethics hotline, that staff can also use anonymously if they don't want to contact management or if the concern relates to management. We have in the recent past, promoted that through posters in the bathrooms so that people can just remind themselves that it's available.
And it is anonymous. They
Oh, thank you for that. And then another page 15, just on the what does look like rather a long list of stuff to close out. Second point down, debt resettlement funding. I don't quite understand what that's saying. Conclusion of audit procedure over underlying costs supporting the recognition of revenue. Can you explain what it is you're looking at there?
So at the time of writing this report, we were still gathering some elements of our information in regards to the costs incurred across the woody debris and sediment clear up work to ensure that where we could see revenue being recognised in terms of the grants from the Crown were being matched and supported by expenditure of the nature that we expected for the purposes of that funding. So the key from our perspective is that funding the costs have been incurred under a contractual arrangement with certain providers, and as you know, you've got certain key providers that have done a lot of the work in that space over the course of the year, and the work is reflective of the expectation of the Crown in that funding agreement. And so we pulled that together over the course. We'd already done a lot of that work, but we just hadn't quite cleaned it up by the end of last week when we sent out a report. So I was keeping a bit of powder dry by putting that in there, but we've sort of completed that work during the course of this week.
Thank you. That's me, thank you.
Any more questions off the floor?
I'm happy to move the report, and I'd just like to congratulate Nadine and her staff because to get a clean slate, we haven't had a lot of questions asked because for me, I'm actually really happy and really pleased to read what's happened. We've had the biggest year that we've ever had for expenditure and work with all our contractors, and it seems to have worked really well and seamless. So congratulations, it's fantastic. So yeah, I'm happy to move this report.
I'll second that and say, if we take a look at the year that this covered, mid-23 to mid-24, it's a year where we had 2 cyclones, probably 9 severe weather events. But on top of that, the government changed. On top of that, we we had 3 waters that became 10 waters, that became local waters done well. We had an RMA change, which was then repealed. And all of that work creates a lot of backroom work for staff. And that's just a few examples I now mention. I'm sure if we sit down, we can pick quite a few up, which has taken time and money and effort from our staff. So Nadine, on behalf of from councillors, I want you formally to extend congratulations and thanks for your team for the high standard of work you have done. I know not everything is done perfectly because we have juggled way more balls than we usually try to juggle. And I want to specifically, Pauline, you need a mayoral certificate. The amount of work and the way you and your team have done it, kapai you with a great attitude, never, your office is always, sometimes I go home and then I go to pick up something, not takeaways, pick up something, and then I see your office lights still on. So thank you so much, and please convey our thanks to your team as well. The professionalism and the extra effort they have put in is second to none. Thank you. So without further ado, moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by myself, all in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you so much, Stu. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Josh. And is it no, it's not tea time. I'm hanging on, people. I'm hanging on. We are going to welcome. So, Stu, we'll see you. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm not sure if you're going to join us next week for council. If other councillors might have questions, I'll leave it up to Pauline and the team to sort out.
Thank you very much. Pleasure seeing you all.
Thanks, Stuart. Are you staying on for the rest of the meeting, or are you guys going?
I suppose my one key question is, what time do you think GHL will be coming in?
So I'm going to do this before morning tea. Then we're going to do Andrew at 10:30. Let's aim for, what do you say, 11? Who organised GHL?
We said it would be earlier than 10:30 for them, so yeah.
So
I'll text, we'll text you, we'll let you know, Stu. But,
that's great, because I might pop away and then pop back in just to be available for the session with GHL, if that's okay with
We'll
the
definitely
members.
not be earlier than 10:30, so 10:30, 11ish, but we'll let you know.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, Mr. Dave Wilkinson. Welcome. Thank you. And thank you for your extensive report, even though it is sad reading as well. I'm going to hand over to you, Dave, to guide us through your paper, and then we'll open the floor for questions from councillors.
Thanks very much, through the chair. Yeah, continued themes across the council. Behaviour and abuse rife. You'll see from the statistics and the maps that we've had a recent 3-monthly explosion, really, of poor behaviour. And that ranges from people stealing flyers from the library to tagging at the mayors. Pretty poor behaviour across the board. Contractor management, ongoing quality, assurance and verification is really important to us. That continues despite the awful tragedy we have had with Tony Croswell and the excavator fatality at Waimate on the 22nd of July. Unfortunately, I can't go into too much detail at this moment while it's under investigation, but we continue to support the WorkSafe investigation and work collaboratively with our fellow colleagues involved in this terrible tragedy. Wellbeing support for staff, following on from the abuse and bad behaviour. We've recently had Mental Health Awareness Week, 23rd to 29th of September, and we put a lot of initiatives on and we had some fun, which was great, and that was well received. And keeping TRW and councillors aware and updated about health and safety. The recent the cases that I've included in the report, and also just touching on the Whangarei Boys College, where the board were charged and 500k reparations were awarded. Hopefully going to get a copy of that report so that I can give you some more information in the next report. But you'll see there's things happening all the time. Quad bike fatalities are bad across the agricultural region. Yeah, any questions in relation to the report? I take it as being read. I forgot that.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, the floor is open. So Dave's paper is on page 15. So Dave, can I ask you, what do you think? We are seeing people more agitated, and I'm surprised that I see a lot of that around the library, which is a calm, beautiful space with kids, and I do know that some of our rough sleepers are in that area, and we are part of a working group to try and see what we can do there. But how do we empower our staff? Because they are just doing their jobs. And especially, I was thinking when the legislation came out from the government about the $750 bill fine if you park in a disability park versus $150. You should see the abuse that council endured on Facebook for just enforcing money, which I think goes to the government. But also, it's their rule, it's not ours. Our people are only there enforcing it. So how do we make sure we look after our staff in a way where they feel confident to do their job and astute enough to stand up for what is right?
Yeah, it's a really good question, one that we're working continuously with. I mean, part of it is actually being there. I'm often over at the library and talking to staff and showing them the support, as are the managers. I think that's really key and important. We do have the videos, the situational awareness, de-escalation videos that we show to staff. And it's not peculiar to Gisborne, it's across the whole country. Libraries are targeted because they're a lovely warm place, free Wi-Fi. It's a great place, but unfortunately it's a great place that attracts a lot of undesirables, I think I put it that way. So yeah, dealing with them. We've trespassed a lot of people, but trespasses is just a piece of paper. We have multiple failures of those trespass rules where people just come into the library, so our staff are faced with actually having to go and say, you're trespass, you shouldn't be in here. We work collaboratively with the police. We've got a meeting with the police just after this meeting now, so we're actually working together as best we can, but it is a struggle and it is a challenge for us.
People trespass for aggressive behaviour and shouting and pushing and spitting, that type of stuff. Yeah, it's not someone who's maybe just a little bit loud.
No, I mean, they're fair and reasonable.
Yeah.
They will give people the benefit of the doubt, but there is a tolerance level which we can't accept. So yeah, we're over there, we support the staff, we talk to the staff, we're well aware of the situation, and all our staff that face on that face-to-face confrontational situation, whether it's animal control team, parking enforcement team, or last week the strategic planning team at County Mall. So it's across the board, and we try and support wherever we can and follow up those incidents.
I think, if I may, through your worship, so we particularly think about the library as having ongoing and persistent problems for a while. That is now starting to increase in its intensity. And if you think about, your everyday kind of career planning as a librarian, you don't expect to wake up in the morning and have to go to work and deal with what they're dealing with. And so part of this is about, well, what further measures do we need to be putting in place to keep our staff safe as they go around their business? Otherwise, why would you do it?
I've got Bruce, and then I've got Larry, and then I have Tony. Bruce, you are next.
Yeah, thank you, Riet. Look, Dave, thank you for your report. Can I just check? I appreciate the sad death is one which there is limited amount that can be said at the moment. Could I just clarify, that is a combined PCBU with Gisborne District?
Yeah, this investigation will affect multiple PCBUs in that section 34, including ourselves, GDC, Tiamakuru, the consultants engaged to help support the project, Logic Forest Solutions Limited, who are managing the health and safety elements, down to all the independent contractors, including FRM 2018, who were involved in this incident. Absolutely, yeah.
So look, I'm not asking for what is the, no, I mean, it doesn't take that much to guess through what is the inquiry about or how they go about it. But how does Gisborne, and how is Gisborne District responding to that? Because obviously we are involved. Do we have a team around it? what's the controls? I guess I'm trying to get the system that's approached, given there's an inquiry, and this could play out in different ways. As you have quite well kept us informed elsewhere, even right through to coroner's hearings. So, what is our internal arrangements to manage this matter?
Yeah, good question, Bruce, through the chair. We have a really excellent lawyer, Adam Hopkinson, who's been totally supportive and very helpful in relation to compiling the Section 168 requests for information, which have been quite detailed, asking for a lot of information. We have got really good information on hand, as our colleagues at FRM and Logic and Timakura. So we're just compiling all that together, working collaboratively through the lawyers to ensure that we provide accurate information of what's actually built up to this incident.
Brilliant. Well, I think, David, as I said, there's a limit to what should be asked here. I just think that's one of those matters which we should monitor through our broader paper, which comes up in PX. So that's great. Thank you for that, David.
Okay, Councillor Foster and then Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, thank you. It's becoming really, always been very controversial, and it's even more so at the moment, the amount of homeless and undesirables in town, and I guess that's reflected.
Use the word undesirables, please. Can we not use the word undesirables? I really...
Well,
homeless. Just stick to homeless. Thank you.
Homeless. Anti-social behaviour. How's that?
Homeless.
Okay, so and that's obviously reflective of the increase at the library, because it's a place where they go. So we've got a lot of staff on the street, with our meter people, and also we've got the Murray wardens trying to look after our shops and combat shoplifting and other undesirable, unsociable things in our CBD. So how are we going to mitigate this? And how, everyone's running for cover. It's mental health. The police aren't really that visible when they say they are. They're not. And so, who is going to look after this problem? It's not just a Gisborne problem. It's a nationwide problem. But everyone's running for cover. And someone's got to address it sometime, because it's just getting out of control. And the reflection is of our CBD, the state of it at the moment. There's, people it's not an attractive environment that it should be, where people should be able to frequent there without any problem whatsoever, without feeling scared, without feeling intimidated. It's getting serious. We need some way, or someone, to try and find a way that we can combat the situation.
So this has been so Nadine, you go first, and then I'll go.
So I can make a comment on that, because our team, following our visit to Hastings to look at what they've been doing, we call them streeties here. So through Anita, she has been leading the collaborative conversations with leadership in this space. So initially with Liz Crawford and Ngāti around what's the capacity to support some more. And in this case, it's because Liz has the kind of shelter, she's oversubscribed, or there's not enough capacity left because of the number that are coming through. What they're finding is that so people may see an increase in the number of streeties at the moment, and some of them are just passing through, so they're kind of quite transit, and then there is a permanent base, which is increasing. She had a meeting last week, I think it was, and is working with Manaaki Tairawhiti, and I understand that they're going to step in and take a bit more of a lead role in this space with Ngāti. So there is some work being done at a collaborative level, also including churches, as well as what support can they lean in and supply, because that's what happens in Hastings, is that it's very much a church-driven initiative to support their there as well. So that's just been kicked off in the conversations and initiatives.
And she is presenting tomorrow day, 1 o'clock at Manaaki Tairawhiti, and talking about that. So that is ongoing work. And then also, as work starts in the CBD, I was at Trust Tairawhiti yesterday, and we saw some presentations and some work happening. Things that will happen fast. It's not going to take years. But I think overall, if we attack things from all different sides and work collaboratively, everyone from their little side. Like you say, it's not no one takes responsibility for, just like in the CBD, the council don't own the buildings. Building owners need to take responsibility for that. We can do the plants and the road markings, but it is that collaborative effort from lots of different angles. Then hopefully in the next while we will see a lift in spirit and also support for people. No one chooses to sleep in Gladstone Road when it's raining. There are severe mental health issues and social issues, and not with everyone, but there are real issues involved. I've been involved with that for nearly 10 years, working alongside the police, and it is so complex. Otherwise, someone would have flicked their fingers and it would have been solved. Even if people say just create a shelter and put people in there, that doesn't work. And I've been to Auckland and Wellington in the last while, and it's even more pronounced there. So it's tough out there for long. Mr. Tony Robinson.
Thank you. I have seen certainly a lot of people congregating outside the library after hours and during the hours for the free Wi-Fi. So I would suggest maybe trialling end of the free Wi-Fi in the building till the end of the year and see how it goes. That might be a big factor. Just switch it off. It might be you give codes out to people who are visiting the library for library purposes, and they can access on a code base, they get it from a staff member, but just shut off the free Wi-Fi and just see what that does. It'd be quite interesting to see.
In response to that, Councillor Robinson, we have actually done that from 7 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
We stop the homeless stopping in that area overnight, but they come back at 6 o'clock in the morning waiting for the library to open and the free Wi-Fi to start. Yeah.
Well, then maybe just have it on for a couple of hours at a nice time in the day. Like midday goes on from 11 to 1. And if people want to access their internet and do stuff for themselves, then that's the time they can be there. The fact that it's on all during day hours and it's causing people to congregate outside the entranceway, and if that's affecting staff and affecting other users of the library, try something different.
But by turning off the Wi-Fi, you're affecting other people's enjoyment, though.
Most people have a cell phone with Wi-Fi on it. They don't need the free Wi-Fi. It's honey for the wasps.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that can't afford the Wi-Fi and the things, and they do come to the library to actually use the free Wi-Fi, and they're generally well behaved. But you're right, it's something we have looked at, and
Password on it.
certainly worth looking at, investigating further.
I think one thing I wanted to say, I don't want to sound like a old man now, but the homeless also have the right to use the free Wi-Fi.
So if a person approaches a staff member in a polite and engaging way, they're not trespassed, then they get the password and they get to use it.
Councillor Alder.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just on that, would it be sensible to offer free Wi-Fi in an area that would be more suitable to have them congregated, as a thought? Addressing the housing crisis in this region, I believe the Showgrounds is looking to put in an extra 50 cabins, and just hoping that we're going to be able to work with them to accommodate that, because that is good, cheap accommodation that could help alleviate some of these problems. But my question, actually to the paper, thank you for the paper, am I right in remembering that you used to have a graph that showed accidents by operator? And
Accidents by? I didn't hear.
by operator, by
contractor.
by each of the operators, and just wondering why you've gone away from that, because I found that quite an interesting
Yeah,
graph.
through the chair, and to addressing Councillor Alder's question, that's a good question. We were struggling to get certain information from certain contractors. We've broadened the horizons, and majority of our work is now in the large body debris and recovery streams. So we've focused on that risk more than our total contractor risks across the organisation, which is still managed, but we haven't got that report as easy and as available and as accurate as I feel is necessary to present to councillors. Yeah.
But you're still reporting the information.
We still get the information as it comes through, but it's not as good as it could be.
Any more questions of Dave? Councillor Telfer.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. Colin, the point just made around the showgrounds putting 50 cabins, and I'm executive, and I don't know anything about that. So,
Oh, sorry.
yes.
Watch out what you hear over a pint at the pub.
So, yeah, no, that's not the case. No.
Could have been off the record.
Councillor Beatty.
Sorry, I just it would be remiss of me not to mention that So I just wanted that on the,
Good point.
on the record. So we have people that are not treaties that are exhibiting the odd poor behaviour as well. We've had family feuds in the library where they've thrown one of our photocopiers, you name it. So I just wanted to make that point. Just I want to cast on that.
Thank you for that. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Foster. All in favour? I need your help. It is 10:05 now. If we break for a coffee now and we come back for Andrew's paper. Andrew, how long do you think? 20 minutes. Then we still have the risk, strategic risk, which is short. That's just like noting, because we are going to do deep dive. So I think what we should say for GHL is 11. What do you think, Pauline? Julian? Thank you. So we're going to break for a coffee now. We'll come back at 10:20. Welcome back, Josh and Bruce. I'm going to take us all to page 29. Andrew, I'm going to hand over to you to talk to us about our insurance renewal.
Through the chair, since my last report in June, the insurers are saying there's not any significant movements that we're expecting with our insurance renewal. And you'll find my update in the report, and I'm happy to.
Has the next paper started yet? If so, we're still muted.
Are we muted? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. The screen is muted. Okay, Andrew, you can start again.
Okay. Through the chair, since my last report in June, the insurers are saying there's not any significant changes or movement that we're expecting. And I'm happy to provide my report, which I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Robinson.
Thanks, Andrew. So just to clarify then, on page 29, the last paragraph there, I'm assuming it says this year the value of insurance assets has been minor. You mean the increase in the value of the insurance or the change in the... Okay. But it does say that in December you're going to find out whether there's going to be an increase in the excess levels. Is that information yet to come to us or to you?
Through the chair, correct. It's imminent, but at this stage I still do not have a pricing for the supplement increase that we've requested, $100 million.
Any indication? So you've told us now that the indication is there's not going to be a significant increase in our premium. Yep. But have they given an indication of what the excess levels might look like?
Through the chair, not at this stage.
Okay. Okay, I just want clarification around that. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, my hand's up. Was it okay if I could ask a question of Andrew, please?
You go, Bruce, and then Rob.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate your paper and the update. It certainly aligns with what I've been advised elsewhere, which is the softening of the market, meaning rates go down or stay the same, or they go down, they never go down, are roughly the same as last year, but of course it's whatever we choose, particularly around valuation movements, that will affect the size of our premium. I'm always interested in actually what we're moving and retaining in the way of risk. And I sense the benefit for Gisborne and the position we're in with the series of events we've had of being part of a larger collective read Boplas. Has there been any particular inquiry made by insurers about Gisborne's specific position? And I'm referencing here how insurers in the domestic market are starting to pick and choose properties to insure, and I just wonder whether there was any update thinking around that. I see the value of Boplas, we're just part of the bigger collective, and indeed we're part of the bigger collective of New Zealand as a whole, but I just wondered whether there was anything particular which I might say could be concerning for us here in Gisborne about reinsurance or getting insurance.
Through the chair, as you're saying, basically we are part of Boplas we have not heard anything from the insurers about looking at tairāwhiti, whether we're an extra risk or anything. We're part of a collective, and at this stage, we have not heard anything.
Brilliant. I mean, that's why I reflect the value of that, and I mean, it's not senior field. It's good to know, Andrew. But look, and just going from the large to the perhaps the ridiculous, I was intrigued that you've got us a drone policy, which I thought was really interesting. Now, I don't presume we're flying drones that have any sort of aerial warfare, but does that cover third party? What happens if we crashed one of these in on somebody? Does it have third party insurance attached to it?
Through the chair, yes, that was the primary reason why we went with drone insurance. We have a liability of $1 million for if it was to go wrong with drone use. Council staff have gone through training, and anybody who is using a drone here at council must have passed that training to use a drone.
Oh, no, that's fine. It was when I saw that it was as much to be thinking about the risk if we drop it somewhere where it shouldn't go. Or likes, do we have cover? So that's great. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that.
Yep, Pauline.
So I can just add, and you do, Bruce, you did raise a good point. Is there anything that we might not be insured for, what we were looking for, and what is that risk, and what are the things that we put with residual? And just to point out that we don't insure our roads and we don't insure our bridges. So there was some talk with regards to looking to, and we probably will do that over the next 6 months, to look at some of the strategic bridges or some of the things with it. But initial thoughts were we'd probably find it hard to get cover for it based on the events that we've had and the cost of it may be very difficult. So it's something that we will explore and ask, but just to be aware, we don't insure them. There may not be any comfort in actually getting insurance for it either, based on what we have been exposed to. But that's just for your information.
Well, I take it, I just noticed on that one, thank you for that, and indeed the summary of assets added, and that's really useful. I do know we do insure the 3 bridges that we've got off NZTA. Is that simply because they're the owner and they say we have to carry the risk?
Through the chair, correct.
Yeah, I figured that. Thank you.
Yeah, just on page 33, the table on council's declared values. Just some of the key changes there, increasing the fire cover loss limit from 30 to 40 million in case there are 2 fires at once. Is this $40 million? Is this in case a fire goes into neighbours or something we've caused? Is that where that comes? Because I struggle to see where. Forest, because I know GHL have got their own forests insured, so are we talking the forests that we own? And I wouldn't think that they're even worth that much, so it's obviously
someone else's forest.
Yeah, can you just give us an update on it?
Sure. So when we say a sublimit, so for the fire, that's for our material damage policy. That's all the above ground. It's not forests. It's only above ground assets. That is the maximum payout you would get for those if a fire happened. And what they were saying is when Kiwi Pools was added to the schedule, basically we had a 30 million, we've now gone up to 40, because now the Kiwi Pools is valued at 50 million. We've got other assets that are of higher value as well, the water treatment plant. However, it was more if you had 2 fires or at the same location 2 fires, that's where they were saying it's important to make sure your sublimit is at a higher level.
Also
also need to be clear, we're not covering everything. We are just covering what we are comfortable to. We will definitely lose out in some way, but there is some certainty that you give yourself that there's a base that you are covering. Colin.
Thank you. Just on that, really, I struggle with the insuring of Mānuka crop. At some point, those Mānuka will have shed a sufficient seed underneath that if there was a fire that went through part of it, it would regenerate. Our forefathers would have cleared the land by lighting a match and wouldn't have wasted money on hours of chainsaws.
Hope that's fire insurance.
Through the chair, just to be aware that we've got planting liabilities and under the ETS, and so therefore you can have significant liabilities associated with that. There's also third party that occurs if you haven't got them included in the schedule, and that if there are a fire resulting on neighbouring properties, you need to have some form of cover. So there's not just for that replanting, there are other, the whole carbon that you have to do within that 4 years. So it's trying to make those two issues covered within the insurance policy. So it goes wider.
So it's the carbon that's accumulating, replant and protection of neighbours through party.
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions? Because we'll get a proper update in December once you have more information about it. So I'm happy to move this paper, seconded by Councillor Robertson. Anything else people wanted to ask? All in favour? Contrary, carried. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, Council Strategic Risk. So that is on page 45. Mr. Steve Breen.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'll take the report as read, but draw the committee's attention to page 46 and the strategic risk summary table. Key points to note on that is that our overall council strategy, strategic risk, forms the basis of the deep dive under public excluded following the conclusion of this public section of the committee meeting. That really forms the basis of this report to committee, and I will talk more to it under where it sits in the report proper. The other point to note, natural environment. We are still to confirm the deep dive and risk assessment. To do that, we are in the process of completing the natural environment risk bow tie. That work is scheduled to be completed in the new year, and we will come back to the committee with a further deep dive on that proposed risk bow tie and supporting residual risk assessment. Page 47 of the report, the table, change in residual risk over 12 months. I'm pleased to advise that we have had a reduction in risk for one of our strategic risks back to within appetite. That is the people and capability strategic risk. Last report was at major. It is now back to moderate, and that is based on a reduction in the percentage of vacancies in our permanent staffing positions. So the table underneath, table 2, I'm also pleased to advise that our treaty commitment risk has also moved back towards our moderate risk appetite setting. Not quite there yet. The movement is based on anecdotal feedback as we roll out our treaty commitments program within the organisation. We intend to follow that up with more structured assessment and measurement of progress there. But in the meantime, I'm happy to report to the committee that we are seeing a movement back towards moderate for our treaty commitment strategic risk. The focus around the strategic risks that still remain at serious. I've spoken to the natural environment risk. The other 3 risks are reported on within the report, and I'm on those. In the meantime, I would draw the committee's attention to page 52 of the report, overall council strategy, strategic risk. This strategic risk, normally we would adopt the bow tie and then run the residual risk assessment on it. However, we are introducing 2 additional steps in this process, following on from feedback from this committee for us to take a closer look at the critical assumptions, underwriting or supporting the council overall strategy, which is our adopted 3-year plan. So management has been working through what we consider those critical assumptions to be. They also form part of the workshop in public excluded today. That will be the opportunity for this committee to look at the risk bow tie. Is it fit for purpose? Have we covered everything from the committee's perspective? With that, is our thinking around what we consider the critical assumptions to be supporting that risk bow tie? Once we have clarity with the committee on those 2 items, we then move to look at our risk appetite settings, and alongside those, the supporting risk consequence matrix thresholds. A little bit of a mouthful there, but we have 9 categories that we use to determine whether our risk is within or outside of appetite. Those criteria have thresholds with each, and we are becoming more familiar with the people and capability thresholds around the number of permanent vacancies that the organisation is carrying. We have similar thresholds around our financial risk. So this process of looking at the risk bow tie, critical assumptions, and then on to these appetite settings is a process that we have underway, workshopping with this committee today. Intention being that if we can get clarity on the risk bow tie and critical assumptions, we will then move on to the risk appetite settings and thresholds, with the intention of coming back to this committee in our December meeting to discuss and get your feedback on those threshold and appetite settings. Once we have clarity, we can then move to adopt and apply. Alongside that application, we are also internally working on a risk management framework that will support the rollout of further risk management thinking and practice within the organisation. So we have a number of work streams happening here. One is reporting back to this committee, getting your direction and clarity, at the same time working to lift our risk maturity across the organisation. Happy to take questions on the report.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions from Steve? Bruce, you go first.
Yes, thank you. I should have probably said right at the start, it's absolutely mine. Well, it's not even really a conflict of interest. But I noticed in paragraph 13 we talk about the good work that's happening around the water service delivery plan. I just note that the consultant you're using, Kevin Scott, is actually a colleague of mine. In fact, if you go to his website, you'll even see me on his website. But I have no financial interest in that consultancy. I happen to be mates more than anything else. We've done a bit of work together, and I'm not involved in any way with the Gisborne work. I just wonder if it's useful to record that. I don't have any comment I want to make on it, but I just realised one of the big risks for us is the changing environment. We probably will talk about water service delivery at some stage in the committee. It's just worthwhile noting that Kevin is a professional colleague of mine, so I just pass that on. Look, just a couple of questions or comments from me, Steve, which is, yes, I noticed the downgrade. Not that it's any less important, but the people and capability going down. The 4 that still remain serious really interest me because, of course, they're highly interdependent, and they feed off the other risks, and they also feed into the status of the other risks. It's a bit of a, I was going to say, Gordian knot, but it is closely related. One of the things that interested me, just at a sort of a small point, I was in paragraph 12, So asset management, which I was trying to grip up on in terms of the nature of strategic risk, in paragraph 12, we say in terms of our delivery intentions, in terms of CapEx, we say delivery will require further concept planning and modelling that will be occurring during the 3YP. Can you tell me what that means? Because we've always had to deliver every year. What do we need to conceptualise?
Through you, Chair, my understanding is that we have a body of work that has been identified under the infrastructure strategy, and as we progress to practical implementation of each, depending on whether there's been any change in the operating environment that affects the delivery of that infrastructure, it may require further planning and modelling to better reflect that change in operating environment.
Yeah, just, and Chair, just to work on that is actually trying to make sure that our asset management plans, as we go through it, we review it each year like the annual plan. And just to say, is it a continuous check-in and review it? So by the time it's not put aside in terms of that plan itself, that it's actually a living document. And by the time we get to the next 3-year plan, that is being continually updated. The other parts that needs to be taken into account, there are, as we said with this 3-year plan, that we would be doing some reviews and modelling with regards to our flood protection. That's going to feed into that. We're also doing a significant review with the roading network itself. So that's those elements that feed into updates and overall process.
Oh, look, that's helpful, Pauline. So you're tying the conceptualisation more in how do we just make it business as usual, integrate asset management planning into our planning, as in contrast to, I read that as CapEx delivery, which if we were needing to conceptualise CapEx delivery, we better do it pretty fast, given what we've got inside the plans. So this is more around asset management planning. Look, I get that. Again, I mean, I could be, it's easy to sit here and critique and say we're asset management plan for ages, but I think that's, if that is an outstanding point, well, we need to work on it, but it's great that we've got that in our agenda. Thank you. Rieta, I made a wee comment to you and around recovery. Steve, I'm not certain, and I'm not looking in any way for recognition, at least not personal one, but certainly around the recovery risk. I just wondered how much the continuing existence of the Tairāwhiti Recovery, I think advisory or control group we call ourselves, is as a control. And I just wanted to reflect to the committee that really is on behalf of the Audit Risk Committee, I do attend those meetings. We meet tomorrow afternoon. And I think it's been, and I would hope, Riet, for you and for Nadine, Pauline, a useful check-in on progress around recovery and key matters. I think it does provide a helpful or a supportive control around some of our broader recovery risks. I don't know whether that's factored into your sense of serious. I'm not going to try and say it shouldn't be serious, Steve, but I just think it's worthwhile to recognise that is still operating, and I hope it has a level of effectiveness. But that's probably in the eyes of the Riet, Nadine, and Pauline.
Yes, Bruce. So I thought I would follow up with Steve, and we can chat later. But that is definitely one of the controls we also have when we talk about recovery risk is this steering group, which have external specialists on it as well to give us that level of expertise, like Duncan, who has been and worked through the Kaikoura earthquake, Bruce, who comes from auditing and money excellence background and checking. So I do think that gives us one way in which we do give a bit of reassurance. I'm not saying change the recovery colour or it's still where it is, but I think it's worth mentioning in there what we are doing as some sort of mitigation. offer.
Yeah, Steve, just on page 48, under asset management, we're currently in our 3-year plan, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and I'm a little bit nervous that around our risk matrix, basically, that we are very, very risk adverse, and to be able to achieve what we want to achieve, we're going to have to, I think we're going to have a really serious look at that. We're going to have to make things happen rather than figure out ways why they can't happen. And I think that's something that we really need to look at. And I hope these workshops that we're planning to having that's directly what it's going to, because I'm a little bit nervous that we're going to get to the end of a 3-year plan and we haven't achieved what we said we're going to do, because we're actually hamstringing ourselves by being too risk adverse. So I'd love to see a 20% reset or something like that, just to achieve the things that aren't going to tip us over, but we can actually get on and do stuff, because I think we're very, very good at dragging things out, and because of just observation.
Thank you. Any other comments on Steve's paper? And we will be doing our deep dive later. So if not, is someone willing to move the paper?
Happy to move that.
Thank you, Bruce, and seconded by Larry. All in favour?
Aye. Read at this stage, I need to effect my apology and leave the meeting. So thank you again to your chairing. Thank you to everybody else that's been here. Great participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. Catch up later. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow. Okay, so we've got 15 minutes. Who's doing our litigation?
That'd be Jacinta.
I'm just thinking we've got...
Not a lot.
Oh, because we do, yeah. So if Jacinta quickly wants to come, I can do. There's a paper behind. Did I see a paper behind it as well? Oh, no, that's the deep dive. So if you can...
I can go and get it, but...
you can cover it. Can you cover it?
Yeah.
We'll see if there's... Yeah.
Not a lot in it, but if I have to get her, I will. It's a fairly standard update.
Oh, I'm just making up stuff, people. I'm not in public excluded here. I am making up stuff. Just ignore me. So what we're going to do is I'm going to close this meeting and formally close and then I am going to give us a 10-minute break, and then we come back at 11 o'clock to do our public